everyone, and welcome. On the 9th of June 2022, Institut Transformace Konfliktu, which is the hub for transformative mediators here in Czech Republic, organized its second annual meeting of Transformative Practitioners, and we decided that we would like to ask Professor Robert A. Bushe, one of the founding fathers of the transformative approach, to give a speech to our members. Martina, you were the one who was responsible for communicating this issue with Baruch. So can you tell us more? How did the theme of the speech came out, and what can we see in the subsequent recording?
Sure. Well, we knew at that time that Professor Bushe can speak about transformative approach many hours, and it would be great. But at the same time, we knew that participants of this meeting will be transformative mediators, people who are already true believers, followers of this approach. So they don't need to be introduced to this approach or dedicated to this approach. I imagine myself on the chair of participant of this meeting, and I realized that I'm really hungry for some, let's say, rather personal confession than just the regular information about the approach. And personal confession from somebody whose life was changed by this approach was something that was really the topic for me. And this is how the idea of the question, hey, Baruch, what do you love the most on this approach, rise.
Okay, so let's see what is the result of this idea.
Yeah, what I said was Martina sent me the topic for this talk, and I'd never had someone ask me to talk on this topic before. Her topic was, what do I love about the transformative model? And wow, I never had that question before. So I thought, well, who do we love? We love our children. And in many ways, the transformative model is like the child of Joe Folger, my partner, and myself, our brainchild. So my talk is going to be sort of metaphorical in terms of what are the qualities of this child that as she's grown up, I find I love them. So obviously we love our children just because they're our children, period, the end. But we also admire and are pleased by and proud of and gratified by certain qualities and features that they develop as they grow up. And that's sort of how I think about the features of the model that I'm going to talk about with you now. These are the things that as this child is growing up, I find I look at her and I say, wow, that's really great. The first thing that I notice about this child is that, and this goes back 35 years basically, to the very beginning, is that she has a new idea of what success means in mediation. So what she shows us is that success doesn't mean settlement. It doesn't just mean reaching an agreement. It means something beyond settlement. That's the first sort of idea that she has, is whoa, success is something beyond settlement. And what is that something beyond settlement? So here I have to thank our late colleague Dorothy Della Noce, brilliant woman who partnered with us from early on. And she formulated this as success is when there is a change in the quality of the parties' interaction. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at human interaction, not transaction, but interaction. So as she described it, there's what we are impressed by when a mediation is successful is the change in the way the parties see and experience both themselves and each other as they interact during this process. And sometimes the way I've described it is parties come into the mediation room looking small and mean, shrunk into themselves and nasty towards each other. And when they leave, they're totally different. They're big and they're open to each other. And that is the transformation that we talk about. So this also reminds me of when this little child developed the ability to present herself in a dramatic way as a sort of map of a cycle that occurs during the conflict process, the conflict transformation cycle. The negative side of the cycle, where people start out weak and self-absorbed, and then the shift to the positive cycle where they begin to become stronger, collect themselves, gather themselves, and then connect with each other. That map, which I'm sure you've seen in our published work and in your training, that's something that I love. I think that's a very nice quality that this model has. The map, as far as I know, is unique. I don't know of any other map, of any other view of conflict like it, and I like it a lot. Part of this map that you've probably seen in training, there is this motion that goes, the cycle that things go through. And then there is a way in which the whole map is summarized by a diagonal line that goes from the dark corner of negative conflict cycle, weak and self-absorbed, right straight across to the positive conflict cycle of strong and connected. That diagonal line, which again, that was like a new development when it happened. It sort of happened in training and talking about this. That diagonal line says people want, and they have the capacity to move from the dark negative to the bright positive. And they want to make that movement. That's what's the motivating force in conflict. People want to be in a positive interaction. So this movement introduced a new thought, a new idea, and our child was a little bit timid about this and not sure of herself. But she said to herself and to the world, this represents what we call a moral impulse in conflict. A moral impulse. Not meaning moral in terms of right versus wrong, although that's easy to misinterpret, but moral meaning higher rather than lower. A higher way of interacting in conflict rather than a lower way. We have the potential within ourselves to be weak and mean, but we also have the potential to be strong and caring. And the impulse to want to step up to that higher level, we think of as a quote-unquote moral impulse. Using this word, our child got in a lot of trouble. A lot of people heard this word and said, what? Moral? What is this? This isn't religion? So, right, it's not, and that's not what we meant. But it's a charged word. But what does it mean? So one of our other wonderful colleagues, Bushe Solars, has described this as we want to act out of our better self. We want to bring our better selves into the conflict interaction. Not our negative lower selves, but our higher selves. And that's exactly what we meant, and she put good language to it. So, and another way of saying it is, what we care about is not just or primarily what we get from this conflict interaction, but how we act. How we act towards ourselves and each other. How we act is not about the solution, it's not about the agreement, it's about a quality of our behavior, a moral quality, a quality that expresses our higher selves. This moral quality or moral impulse meant a lot to me. My father, God bless him, was a businessman. As a businessman, the bottom line matters. But my father had a certain approach to business and to life, and the way he summarized it, which is also the epigram at the beginning of our first book is stand up for yourself and make room for the other guy. Stand up for yourself, it's like empowerment, right? And make room for the other guy. That was my father's motto and his approach. And that's exactly what our child began to talk about here. And that made me very happy to hear my father's voice. And was also gratifying to me later in life, not from childhood, I got exposed to Talmudic studies, traditional Jewish studies. And within that Talmud, there is a very famous saying from a very famous sage, which says, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I am only for myself, what am I? And again, I hear the echo in that voice of empowerment. I have to stand up for myself and my father's voice, but also recognition. I have to make room for the other person. I have to stand up for myself, but if that's all I do, I'm not really a full-fledged human being, because there are other people around that I have to consider. That was another milestone for me, and whoa, this does make sense. I really love this. As our children grow up, they begin saying things that, I'm sure you've experienced this, we say to ourselves, wow, this is really a very unusual and bright and wise child. And this is what's happened over the years with this model as it's unfolded in front of our eyes. Yes, with our efforts and the efforts of other people, but in a certain way it has its own motive force. So that's the way things go, but children make mistakes. And we've made mistakes with this model. So after we began to realize, yes, this is a wonderful thing, this moral impulse, our first impulse was to push people into it. And we wrote about, years ago, the so-called pushy mediator. A mediator who pushes the parties to get clear and pushes the parties to recognize each other. And that was quite a mistake, really. Not that we didn't correct it, but that's another stage in growth. This idea, if you read the first edition of our Promise of Mediation book, that phrase is in there, pushy mediator. If you read the second edition, which is a better book, and you should buy it, it's not in there anymore. Why not? Because this move towards our better selves cannot be forced. We support parties, we don't supplant their decisions. We support and never supplant. That became our motto. That became our calling card. Transformative mediators support and never supplant. Why? Because forced change is never real. It's never genuine, it's never authentic, it's never lasting. So therefore, we have to hold ourselves back from being pushy. Instead, we have to support the parties, not push them. That was another brilliant insight of this brilliant child. I hope what I'm saying bears some close relationship to what you have learned from Robin and Martina, maybe others, about the transformative model. In other words, this should sound all familiar to you. And this is what I love about this model, all of these things. But there's one thing I love even more, and that is this approach is driven to ask questions. Why? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing it this way? What underlies everything that I'm doing? We call this the idea of purpose drives practice. My purpose explains why I practice in such and such a way. But underlying everything is something we call premises. And we don't get to them until we keep asking why? And what I love about this child is that's what she does. She's always asking why, until we get to the very bottom of the matter. What is the bottom line, as it were? What do we mean premises? We mean beliefs. Beliefs. What do we believe about our clients as human beings and ourselves? Believing something is a matter of choice. It's not just quote-unquote faith, it's choice. This is how I choose to see it. Our choice is to adopt what we call an asset model of the human being, not a deficit model. We don't focus on all of the negatives that human beings have, which they do. We focus on the underlying strengths and capacities and positive motivations that they have. So for us, human beings at their core are strong and caring. Strong and caring, not weak and selfish. And therefore, we don't have to control parties out of a fear that they will hurt themselves and each other. If we don't control them, we trust that the parties are capable and want to care for themselves and each other. We trust the parties to care for themselves and each other. So we don't have to control. We can simply support. That maybe is the thing I love most about this child. That she's grown up in the world as a world that people say, you know, human beings, well, they're weak and selfish. And she says, no, not true. I don't believe that. I believe that at bottom, human beings are strong in themselves and connected with each other. That's what I choose to believe, she says. That's very brave. And she acts on that belief. She practices with that belief. She supports and doesn't supplant. She doesn't control. She trusts the parties. That's what I love about this child. Wow, that's pretty amazing in the world that we live in, to assert those beliefs and act on them in a practice like mediation. So I'm going to conclude with a story. The story is from a talk that was given by another person, I won't name him, to a group of mediators like you. And he told a story about a mediation he did, family mediation, and afterwards the clients asked him, so what do you think of us? That's a strange question. That's what they asked him. What do you think of us? And he said to them, I'll tell you what I think of you when I retire. In other words, what I think of you is so poor that I'm afraid to say it now because I won't get any more business. What he really meant was, what I think of you is, you're foolish, stupid, helpless, and without me, you would be nowhere. But he's not going to tell them that, right? I happen to know this guy, and I happen to know that's exactly what he thinks of his clients. That's not what we think. That's not what our child thinks in this model. What does she think? I don't know if you've met or come across mediators like this fellow I just described. Unfortunately, I think there's lots of them. And he's even a teacher of other mediators. But we don't believe that about our clients. You haven't been taught that by your teachers here. What do we believe? We believe when we see our clients shift from negative to positive conflict, transform their interaction, we believe our clients are heroes. In a transformative mediation, the client, the party, the person whose life is involved is a hero to step up out of themselves, collect themselves, move towards each other. That's heroic. That's what we think of our clients. They're heroic. They're awesome because they do all of this on their own with support from us. But they have this quote-unquote right stuff, and we're just supporting them in finding their way to it. Heroic and awesome. That's what we believe about our clients in the transformative model, and I love that about this model. And the last thing I want to say is, you know what? We love people who love our children, don't we? We love people who see how special and wonderful our children are. And so I love not just the clients. Not only are the clients heroic and awesome in transformative mediation, so are the mediators. So are you. To take to this model, even though it flies in the face of, conventional views of the deficits of human beings as primary. No, you reject that. To do this, you have to reject that. I stand in awe of you folks who are the next generation, basically. You're the children and grandchildren of us parents and grandparents of the transformative mediation model. I stand in awe of you. I love you because you love this child. I stand in awe of Robin and Martina, your teachers and their colleagues all over the world, and of you and your colleagues all over the world who take this precious set of ideas and beliefs and put them into action. So that's the last thing I want to say that I love about this model. Thank you very much for listening, and Robin, thank you for translating.
So there is a question, what is your most favorite question you are asking yourself during the mediation?
First of all, in these times, these days, I do much less mediation and more writing and speaking and teaching, so you probably have much more experience than I do. But when I was doing more mediation, the question I would probably ask myself, which was the best question, is how do I control my impulse to control? You never lose that impulse. We always, even though we believe in our clients, we believe they have the right stuff, but there's always this impulse that says, I have to step in. That's the question I ask myself. How do I control that?
So another question is when you were speaking about transformative mediation as your child, what was the things you made to protect her? Because the world in which she grew up was dangerous world or is dangerous world. So what do you do to protect her?
Yeah, that's a lovely question. That's a lovely question. The thing we do to protect her is to do the very best we can do to strengthen her underlying beliefs, to support her belief that despite all the quote-unquote evidence, human beings are strong and decent. And if the beliefs are strong enough, then she will stand up against anything. And she won't be frightened and she won't be timid. She'll be herself, strong and consistent, and carry through. I think that's the best thing we can do. We have to give her the confidence to believe in her beliefs, to take herself seriously, this child and all of those who represent her. Just something else about the previous question. The other thing which I think relates to this, that I asked myself in mediations when things were crazy and falling apart is, do you really believe that these people in front of you are strong and good? How could you believe that? Look at them, right? Come on. And no, that I'm asking myself, do I really believe what I believe? And the same thing goes for teaching my child. We have to teach our children to have confidence in what they know to be true. And they know that from the inside. They don't know it from outside evidence.
So in other words, you mean to support transformative mediation in a transformative way?
Yeah. When we teach transformative mediation and we reach the stage of talking about what are our beliefs about human beings and their fundamental nature, the students always look, what? We're talking about this in a practice course in mediation skills? What do beliefs have to do with skills? That's like the natural thing to ask. What do beliefs have to do with skills? So let me ask you, what are skills without underlying beliefs that explain and justify them? What kind of skill is that? What kind of practice is that doesn't have any basis in underlying beliefs about our clients and the world we live in. I don't think that's much of a practice at all, whether it's mediators or lawyers, and that's what I tell my students. Just to add to that, there is a saying, a fish does not know that it's living in the water. You've heard that, right? And students of ideology, value systems, say this is true of us as human beings. Those who are within the dominant worldview or ideology don't know that they even have a system of beliefs, like the fish doesn't know it's in the water. When you find out that you have beliefs is when you jump out of the water and you say, this dominant thing doesn't make sense to me. And then you first become conscious that you can choose where you want to live, what you want to believe in. So read through all the literature on mediation. You will not find a frank and open discussion from facilitative mediators of what they believe about their clients and their clients' capacities and motivations. It's not there. It's not there because they don't think about it. It's obvious. These people are helpless and selfish. It's obvious. So I need to do stuff for them. What's obvious is the water the fish is in. What's not obvious is a different truth that happens when the fish wakes up and starts to walk on dry land.
It's interesting, a metaphor of the fishes leaving the water, Baruch, and I don't want to be offensive because of your religion, but that's the evolution. So that's what makes us human beings. It's interesting.
Well, there's a whole discussion of that in Jewish mysticism, Robin, that doesn't necessarily subscribe to evolution. But the metaphor of the fish versus the land creature runs all through Kabbalistic teaching. And it's, definitely land creatures have a superiority over the fish, even though the fish are very close to the water that they live in. But the choice that happens when you move out of the water, that's a superior form of life. That's a little snippet of Jewish mysticism. But, you're absolutely right. I'll take support where I can find it.
So another question is, in a real mediation, when you are a mediator, how do you handle the situations where it's quite obvious that one of the clients is mean, he's untruthful, and the reasons he's here are not probably to get any solution, but for example, to revenge the other party. So how do you handle those situations?
So the nice thing, I would say, it's another thing I love about this model, this approach, is that I do the same thing no matter what. That what I do is I support the parties in saying what they want to say and taking the stands that they want to take by reflecting what they say, primarily, sometimes by summarizing what's been said by both. But reflection is the basic tool. And in that situation that you described, we could also substitute facts and say, what do you do when one party is obviously much more powerful than the other party? And the answer would be the same. I reflect what both parties are saying. And when I do that, so if you want to call it I don't know how you want to describe this, the word that comes to mind is the victim party, the one who is being taken advantage of and being attacked and being revenged upon. That person, the more you can reflect what they're saying, the stronger they become, the clearer they become. That's the effect of good reflective practice, good reflection practice, I should say. And as they become stronger, they become able to, number one, resist the negative behavior of the other side, to assess that behavior and what they want to do about it, and to make choices about it, including the choice to leave, including the choice to stand up and confront, including a number of other possibilities. But all that I need to do is to practice the skill that I've learned of reflecting that party. And I reflect the other party, the vengeful party, the powerful party, with all of the content of their vengeful, power-mad statements. And perhaps when they hear that, they decide, I don't want to say that. I don't like what I'm being here. I need to change. Perhaps, perhaps not. But I don't need to make anything happen there. All I need to do is to use the skills and the methods that you've been trained in to support the parties, to stand up for themselves and make room for each other if they choose to. That's what I would advise you to do. And just to add to that, why do I even have to do that? Look, if I really believe in the parties, then just let them talk and I could just sit there. No, that's not what we do. Some people accuse us of that. We don't do anything. We're totally passive. Wrong. Reflection is an active intervention, and it's very helpful, because even though people have the inherent ability to stand up for themselves, conflict weakens that. Conflict challenges that. Just like when you get a cold, your body has the inherent ability to be healthy, but a bacteria or a virus will weaken it. Conflict is like that virus. So when I reflect what a person says, it gives them a chance to hear themselves, to think through what they're saying, to modify it, to strengthen it, to back off from it, make choices about it. My reflection allows the person to have a conversation with herself. And that's what often people don't have the chance to do, because conflict is very fast. By my stepping in and reflecting, I allow people to really think and speak to themselves, and by doing so, to gather strength and to gather decisiveness and to get stronger. That's incredibly valuable, and you know how to do that now.
Okay, so there is some challenge, Baruch. If you would have just 3 words, how would you describe transformative mediation in 3 words?
That's easy. Support and never supplant. That's 4 words. Support, never supplant. That's it. I would just add, like to what I said before about reflection. You say to yourself, you hear this, and maybe that's where this question comes from. You say, it can't be that easy. It can't be that simple to deal with revenge and power and this and that. The answer is, that's not easy. To consistently and effectively practice reflection in the middle of mediation is not easy. And if you've tried it, you know that it's not easy. It's not something that in any field the people who practice that profession do. Lawyers don't do it. Doctors don't do it. Therapists, by and large, don't do it. Counselors don't do it. Reflection is an undiscovered treasure, because most of the time, the people who are the interviewers, the interveners, are giving advice, asking penetrating questions. We have whole courses in law schools about asking questions. We don't have any courses about listening and reflecting. None. So, it ain't easy. It's very effective. But it's an acquired skill, and it's one that has to be practiced and done faithfully. So I'm not saying it's easy.
I have just one remark on the last answer, because in a couple of days ago, I saw in LinkedIn that one of the mediators, he's probably American or Britain, created a book, and the name of the book is How to Ask the Right Questions. And it's all about the mediation. So that's the title of the book. So
Right.
That's it.
Right. And that person believes, again, that the parties are helpless without his or her expert intervention and questions. Let me just say another word of encouragement to you. Either it's encouragement or it's a forewarning. You are, assuming you're moving forward with this approach to your practice, you are in a minority, right? The large majority of the mediation field is about settlement, transaction, control, asking the right questions. It's totally different from what you've just learned, and you are a little slice of the pie. So what? Might does not make right. We don't judge by the numbers. But you should know that, and this may encourage you, this is sort of my latest project, there are minorities in every field, every professional field, who follow an approach like the one you're learning. In medicine, whether it's doctors or nurses, in counseling and therapy, in law, even lawyers. There's a minority of lawyers who practice client-centered lawyering that uses all the kind of skills that you've learned in education, in teaching. In every one of these fields, there are folks like you who are fish leaving the water to live in a better world. So we can draw support from colleagues in other fields. And in this sort of movement towards a different kind of way of helping our clients, our students, our customers. That should give us a little bit more sense of we're not alone in this, and we're not. So I wanted to add that to just give you a little broader view. I'm hoping to write something about this and to bring some of these folks together over the next couple of years. And if I'm successful, we'll find a lot more support for what we're doing. Let me just say, I don't know, like parents at my age don't know if they're going to live. Hopefully I will, but you don't really necessarily think you're going to make it to your grandchildren's weddings, right? Or your great-grandchildren's weddings. So I may not live long enough to see this approach to helping people in professional practice become the majority. I don't know if I'm going to live that long, if change is going to happen that fast. But I count on you to carry it forward. I count on my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren to continue moving that forward. And I'm pretty sure that some of you will do that. So I thank you for that. Again,